Good morning, students. Till now, we have studied in the preceding sections that the male and female gametes in flowering plants are produced in pollen grains and ambrose sac. So now, as you know, that gametes here are non-motile. They have to brought together for fertilization to occur. So how this can be achieved? This can be achieved with the help of a process that is called pollination. So the definition, you all know, pollination is the mechanism to achieve this objective: transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the pistil is called pollination. Pollination is of two types, basically two types, that is self-pollination and cross-pollination. So in kinds of pollination, self-pollination is also called autogamy. Autogamy in this type of pollination, pollination is achieved within the same flower. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. In a normal flower which opens and exposes the anthers and the stigma, complete autogamy is rather rare. Autogamy in such flowers requires synchrony in pollen release and stigma receptivity and also. Now, in this slide, you are watching chasmogamous flowers and clistogamous flowers. What is the difference between them? There are some plants such as Viola, Oxalis, Commonlina. They produce two types of flowers. Chasmogamous flowers means which are similar to flowers of other species with exposed anthers and stigma. Means these flowers are open. And clistogamous flowers are those flowers which don't open at all. In clistogamous flowers, anther and stigma lie close to each other while anthers dehisce in the flower buds. Pollen grains come in contact with the stigma to affect pollination. Thus, clistogamous flowers are invariably autogamous as there is no chance of cross-pollination. But in chasmogamous flowers, because they are open, self-pollination can also occur and cross-pollination may also occur. So in clistogamous flowers, assured seed sets are set in absence of pollinators. So do you think which is advantageous, clistogamy or chasmogamous flowers? So clistogamous flowers, because self-pollination occurs, then no genetic variability is there, so no variations are there and no evolution is there. So plants always prefer cross-pollination. As we know that there are three types of pollination. Orthogamy we have studied earlier. Now we'll study about geitonogamy and xenogamy. Now what is geitonogamy? Geitonogamy is basically transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. Means plant is the same but flowers are different. Although geitonogamy is functionally cross-pollination involving a pollinating agent, but it is genetically similar to the autogamy since the pollen grains are from the same plants. Means it's genetically similar, but pollinators are always required. And in xenogamy, transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of a different plant. This is only type of pollination which during pollination brings genetically different types of pollen grains to the stigma. So in this xenogamy, genetically different and variations are present and then this causes to evolution. This is the main type of cross-pollination. Now this is a summary kinds of pollination, self-pollination and cross-pollination. As we are watching in this slide that self-pollination is of two types, autogamy, geitonogamy. Autogamy means same flower and geitonogamy different flowers of the same plant. And cross-pollination, as I have told in the previous slide, xenogamy. In this slide, pollinating agents are required. Now there are two types of pollinating agents: abiotic agencies and biotic agencies. In abiotic agencies means first is Entomophily, means the plants are wind pollinated. Pollination done by wind. Hydrophilic pollination done by water. These are abiotic agencies. And biotic agencies, entomophily means pollination done by insects. You all know butterflies and honeybees and all these insects are going to produce nectar. Plants are producing nectar and then they are pollinating species. And Chiropterophily, it's bats. Bats are doing pollination. Malecophily means pollination done by snails, and ornithophily means pollination done by birds. So we will study in detail in the next slide. Now, in this slide, you're watching cross-pollination is named after agency that assists. Means Anemophily is assisted by wind, Hydrophily is assisted by water, Entomophily is assisted by insects, Ornithophily means birds pollination, and then Malecophily means snail pollination, or Chiropterophily means bat pollination. First of all, we'll study about Anemophily. Anemophily means wind pollination. So characteristics of anemophilous flowers are small, and flowers are colorless, odorless, nectarless, and pollen grains are light, small, winged or dusty. They have to be blown by wind to distance up to 1300 kilometers. So winged pollen grains of pinus are found hundreds of kilometers away from the parent plant. In this type of pollinating agent, the plants are having gunpowder mechanism. Means anthers burst suddenly to throw the pollen grains to larger distances. Pollen grains are dry, smooth, non-sticky, and stigma is hairy, feathery, or branched to catch the wind-borne pollen grains. So this is a very wasteful mechanism because a large number of pollen grains are present in the environment, and these pollen grains can cause hay fever, bronchial allergy, depression in the human beings because they are present in the environment in very large number. So they can do like this. Now next is our hydrophily. Hydrophily means it is the mode of pollination or transfer of pollen grains from mature anther of the flower to stigma of another flower, which is accomplished through the agency of water. So in this type, flowers are small, inconspicuous, and pollen grains are naked without exine, but they have mucilaginous cover so that they don't get spoiled in the water. And the example we are watching, Vallisneria. In Vallisneria, uh, this is a submerged aquatic plant, and submerged aquatic in freshwater aquatic plant. So they are producing large number of male flowers, and female flowers bear long, stalked, solitary pistillate flowers. So they have a large, sticky stigmas. So pollen grains are covered by mucilage, which help them in sticking to stigma. After pollination, the female flowers is pulled inside water by coiling of its stalk. Next is entomophily. Entomophily is the characteristics of entomophily. You all know that it's insect pollination. So characteristics of entomophilous flowers are they are showy, brightly colored, so that they can attract the insects, and they are having the most insect pollinated flowers have a landing platform. So in many cases, the petals guide the insects to collect nectar glands, and they produce honey, nectar, honey glands, and flowers produce an odor which may be pleasant, just like jasmine, or foul smell maybe also. So nectar is secreted for feeding the visiting insects. Nectar glands are placed in such a position that an insect must touch both the anthers and the stigma. So, in this, stigmas are often inserted in sticky. Such adaptations are present like this. Pollen grains are spiny, heavy, surrounded by yellow, oily, sticky substance called pollen kit. Next is zoophily. Zoophily means pollination which is carried out with the help of animals. So animals are some primates, lemurs, arboreal rodents, reptiles, etc. help in this type of pollination. Next is malecophily. Malecophily, which is done with the help of snails, and ornithophily, which is done with the help of birds. We will study about this in later classes.